episode of Tarvalon Talks. Today we'll be talking about Origins on Amazon. I'm Fenya.
And I'm Doll.
And I'm Thad.
I thought let's start it off with just sort of a brief explanation if you're not aware. If you go into the extras on Amazon Prime's Wheel of Time, they have these small, short episodes. They're about 3 minutes long, and they're called Origins. And what they are just illustrated stories from the world of the Wheel of Time, taken from the source material, that sort of give you the background. They're really beautiful, but they're not really animated. They're just sort of illustrations that kind of move.
It's like a watercolor painting that's animated, almost.
It is.
I've never seen an animation style like this, and it's really nice.
I feel like I've seen them before in and this is weird, like the movies you see at Civil War battle lines.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's a good point.
It sort of reminds me of
It does kind of feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that I liked it, but because it's kind of got this very blurry quality, I got a little bit of eye strain trying to make it sharpen.
It's just how I see the world entirely.
I mean, that's how I see the world when I take my glasses off, but
I feel like it is warranted in mentioning this, that depending on the device that you were watching the Wheel of Time on, for some strange reason, for a good while, this may have been fixed, but you weren't able to access a lot of this X-ray features from the Amazon Prime app. Like if you had a smart TV with the Amazon Prime app, for whatever reason, these X-ray extras weren't showing up. But if you were to do the same thing and go into the Android or iPhone app for it, they would show up. Or if you went to the browser, they would show up. I watched it through an Amazon Fire Stick, so all of it showed up. So check on the device you're watching. It may or may not be there. If it's your Amazon Prime account, just go to open it up in a web browser and go and check these out if you haven't, because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, more than what we're talking about.
I was watching it initially on a smart TV and I didn't have any issue accessing it, but I think it was in a different place. Like on the browser, it's under extras or something, and on the TV, I had to actually go into episodes and scroll back to find it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
It may just be that it's in a different spot, not that it's not there at all.
I do know that my father watched it through an app on his TV. Like it wasn't built into the TV. He had a smart TV that you're able to download apps onto. We downloaded it. He watched it. I told him to go watch these and he couldn't find it. So I went over there and looked for it, and they were not anywhere on this app or this version of the app, which is why I always tell everybody to check a few devices just to be sure that they catch everything.
I could not find them at first on my Roku TV, and I watched them on the browser, but it did look like Fenya said. If you bring up the episodes and then you scroll back to the left past episode 1, they're like episode 0.
It's like a hidden track on a CD.
Right. It really is like a hidden track on a CD, and that was like the only way I could access it on my Roku.
It was a treasure hunt.
I know.
Now, like at first it was that as well for me, but I think they have since made an entire extras section for it, because that's how I went and watched the extras recently, because I was flipping through the timeline on my Fire Stick, checking out all of the organizations and myths and places and stuff.
That's where I found it on the browser, which is where I watched it today. But initially, when I was watching it on my TV, it was not even initially. I watched both episodes that I was going to be talking about on Saturday, and I still had to do the scroll back. There was no kind of extra section.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, we decided to each take an episode and sort of dive into it. I thought we'd go in episode order, but that puts me at the first 2 because I picked the first 2 episodes.
Oh, did you?
I did.
We could just kind of stagger it and just kind of round table.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about them is that even though obviously they were released in an order, they're not chronological. Like, you don't have to watch them in order. They don't build on each other to make sense as a story arc.
Yeah, probably if you're going to watch any of them first, it would probably be good to watch the Breaking of the World one first, which is episode 1.
Okay, that's fair.
So in episode 1, it's the breaking of the world. You see a shot of what appears to be a brown Aes Sedai in the Tower Library, talking to some novices. She explains what happened in the breaking of the world. 3,000 years ago, during the Age of Legends, the companions, or the male Aes Sedai, all sealed the Dark One into the prison, but he struck back and they all went mad. And I think some of the things that stood out to me were some of the details didn't seem to be quite right And maybe that's because they're lost in history, and this is like the perspective of somebody from 3,000 years later. But she says the Dark One briefly healed Lutherin's madness so he could see what destruction he wrought and how it was going to go on as long as there were male channelers. And like, it wasn't the Dark One, it was the Xiaomao. And it was specifically to see that he killed all his family. Like, I don't even think he noticed the rest of the world around him once he saw his family laying there.
I feel like that actually ties in really well with the first couple of books and the first season, where they want us to believe that Ishamael is the Dark One. I mean, obviously, like the reader knows, yeah, okay, there's another 14 books left, or however many. That's he's not the big bad guy.
We also know that they didn't really defeat him. It was a trick.
That too.
But yeah, you're right. That could tie into that, but I don't know how much of these were tied to the production of the show and how much, like, outside of it they were. I'm choosing to believe in my own headcanon that it's because so much knowledge was lost. I mean, nobody was there but Ishamael. Nobody in world would have known why Lutheran pulled the power down on him unless there were witnesses around that heard him screaming.
It's kind of one of those things, someone tells a story it's a game of telephone to where details change probably throughout time and it just becomes something else entirely. There is a grain of truth in there probably, but in actuality, what you're hearing is 90% false.
It's almost as if the events fade into memories when myth becomes legend.
Hey, look at that. Look at that. Plays right into the themes.
I'm also not sure. I'm assuming it's a brown Aes Sedai because she's wearing like a brown cape. Doesn't look like a shawl to me. And the others are wearing like white dresses with these like tabards over them. Seems like a brown sister talking to novices about when they take the shawl, they're taking up the job of protecting the world from another breaking. And I thought that was specifically the Red Ajum.
Yeah, that sounds about right for that sort of thing.
I was also sort of thrown off because it made the Age of Legends look like ancient Greece or Rome.
Yeah, it does feel like they took a little bit of creative liberty with some of that because we're supposed to be in this kind of futuristic-esque society with magic.
And we do get a futuristic view of the Age of Legends in some of the later ones. I'm thinking specifically the White Tower. I think we get a glimpse of it.
Could have just been the architecture because, like, look at DC. That was not built in ancient Rome. I guess it was just sort of the future is going to look like the past, or the past looks like the future.
Time is cyclical.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's a nice excuse to shuffle the people of the land.
Yeah, that was another point that she brought up in the breaking, that the men were tossing the land about so much that cultures died and the land looked completely different and everybody had to start over and rebuild everything. So much knowledge was lost. And then being a brown, my personal favorite scene of the whole thing was the image of the Tower Library. You see there's a giant hall with all of these books, and she's talking about the knowledge that was lost, not just the technology, but so much knowledge from before the Age of Legends was lost because everything was destroyed. We only got remnants, scraps of knowledge that were left.
We see several points of that happen in the book series with, Browns are just like, yeah, I've got this one page out of a book and it's like 2 passages and we're trying to extrapolate what it means. That happens several times. It's a great short for kind of introducing you into the world building of the show because you come in and it seems like general medieval fantasy when it's so much more than that.
You don't really get a full glimpse of what was lost in the breaking in the show until they do that cold open that took place in the Age of Legends, where they did make it look very futuristic.
Which episode was that?
Is that 6 or 7?
I think it was 7.
Wasn't it the final episode?
It probably was.
I feel like, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I feel like 6 is Swan, 7 is Rand's mother.
Yep, so it was 8.
Yeah, because you get that like reveal that actually this is a like kind of post-apocalyptic world after all, which comes as a huge surprise for anyone who hasn't read the books.
Right, and it kind of tracks for it because in episode 7 we learn who the dragon is, so that's a perfect tie-in to, oh hey, here's the Age of Legends with Luz Theron talking to Tamerlane, whatever her name was.
Yeah, and then you see the flying cars.
Which I loved that shot because you see in an earlier episode, and I don't remember which one.
First episode.
Yeah, you see that same scene.
It's the opening shot in the first episode.
It's so good.
It's a callback to that.
I loved that callback.
Because that is literally like one of the first shots of the first episode. As we get this kind of overhead of what looks like a kind of desolated, overgrown society. And then episode 8 cold open happens and you go, oh, that's it right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even that original opening shot, if you're not paying close attention, you would think it was just ancient ruins, but it's pretty clear that those aren't just like rudimentary buildings. Those were pretty intricate.
Well, I would say they're ancient ruins, being some 3,000 years old.
Well, I meant ancient from our time perspective.
Technologically advanced, but still ancient.
Okay, now my brain's broken. They're both advanced and ancient. Those two aren't contradictory.
Not at all.
I'm just biased because of my perspective in time. All right, do we want to go with episode 2 or do we want to skip around?
I mean, I guess we can skip around. Do you want to do one, Fenya?
Sure. So, one of the episodes that I watched in preparation for this was episode 4, which is Sidene Sidar Stone. And it's the Amerlin talking to, or at least I'm assuming she's the Amerlin talking to, I'm assuming, some novices. And it's kind of like there's a short introduction to the Age of Legends where they talk about how it was the era of true collaboration as female and male channelers worked together. And that leads into an explanation of the two halves of the one power, Sidar being like the female side and Sidene being the male side. And then she gives an explanation that the Dark One tainted Sidene and all male channelers go mad. And it ends with her leading the novices and to some extent the viewers in the flower bud exercise where you imagine the flower bud in all its detail. And I liked it because it's kind of, I mean, all of these episodes are really, but I like that they're Randland 101 for people who either haven't read the books or read them a long time ago and don't remember a lot, or you're like me, you've read them once, but there's so much to keep track of that like all of it kind of, jumbles together. Like, I'm going to be honest, I can never remember that Sidar is the female side and Sidene is the male side. I'm like, there's female and male. That's all I need to know.
I can't ever remember either, but I also can't remember which is my left hand and which is my right, so.
I did like that they actually did the whole think of the flower thing, because that was always a big thing for channeling in the book series. That was like, I think the number one thing I always taught female channelers is imagine a flower budding.
Was the one that Moraine teaches to Egwene, which is what made me assume that Egwene was the one that channeled Bella, because Moraine was trying to get her trained before she lashed out and got sick.
It's a good
It was a red herring.
Yeah, good red herring.
Throwback to last episode. And also, having read the book so long ago, it's sort of interesting thinking back to the whole male and female and all of the stereotypes that go beyond that and such strict binaries. It's kind of uncomfortable now.
I mean, Wheel of Time is very dated in some respects, in some key respects. And, like that's one of them.
I mean, it's 30 years ago at this point.
Yeah, like understandably dated.
It's one of those things, if you have to realize it's a product of its time.
Definitely dated. But it'd be interesting to explore.
And I hope that we do get more of an explanation or an exploration of that. I think there are a lot of areas in the books where you could go a little off script and update that. And I think that Rafe should. But it makes sense for something like Origins specifically, where you're getting, and it's not even 3 minutes. I mean, the entire video is 3 minutes, but it's really only like a minute and a half because so much of that is credits.
It's like a good 40 seconds of it is the credits, yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense that you don't get into any nuance in something that's supposed to be this very short introduction to how channeling works in the world.
I feel like we're probably going to get a good kind of delving into that if episode 4 with Alana and her warders is any indication of what we've seen so far.
At this point, with what we've seen in the show, I have a lot of faith that Rafe will do that. I think that he's handled the show quite well thus far and done a good job at updating things that need to be updated. I mean, not that the show is perfect, because it's not, but I think that overall, it was a very strong start. Promising.
I always give a pass to a first season of any show because it's almost always at its worst, and it will get better with time if they take the care to do it.
I'm not quite that generous, but I did like the first season of Wheel of Time, so.
There are definitely shows that I will not watch past the first season. But yeah, I'm going to be more lenient on it, especially since there's so many changes that have to take place, not just to update the story, but to make it manageable for a visual media. You can't have 250 named characters on a TV show.
I've been thinking about adaptations of fantasy novels, specifically in relation to Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings, which also, of course, had a big adaptation out. And I think something that for me really helped with Wheel of Time is that I believe that Rafe is a fan, and I see that exhibited in how he like interacts with fans and how he gives us information. And that makes me more willing to trust him when he does something that I don't necessarily understand. Whereas I don't feel like that with the Lord of the Rings showrunners. This is a whole other conversation, but like that trust that a showrunner has to build with the audience is really important.
I have a whole tangent I could go on for Rings of Power, but that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
Should we do a Rings of Power episode? Listeners, do you want an off-topic episode?
Pertaining back to Wheel of Time with the whole adaptation thing, I feel like we could put a pin in that for a minute and come back to it after we go through all the Origins episodes, because I do have, something to say on that. Something small. Not bad, just something that has been kind of at the back of my head for probably the last year about how they're going to handle this inside of the adaptation for the show. But do you have anything else on this episode of Saidar, Saidin, and the Stone?
I think we covered basically everything I had to say about it.
What was the stone part?
I don't know.
Okay, I actually watched it this afternoon. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking maybe that was just a reference that someone who is more well versed in Wheel of Time trivia would catch that I just didn't.
The only thing that comes to my mind is the Stone of Fear.
That was all that I could think of, and that has nothing to do with this episode. So,
unless they're trying to say that the male channelers are stones and the females are flowers or something. Like, just listening to it, the men are strong and have to tame it. And I'm like, God, that's so... Ugh, no.
Yeah, it's like the women have to surrender to it and men seize the power, and it's just kind of like...
I'm like, oh, no. No.
It's like, for men, it's like a nondescript raging torrent that they have to seize and wrestle and gain control of it. And with women, it's just like, imagine the budding flower. Now surrender yourself to it, let it into you. And it's just like, I don't like this terminology at all.
This is one of the times when I have more sympathy for Nynaeve, because I would think that was bullshit too.
Yeah, that's probably partially why she had a block for the longest time. She's so headstrong that she would be the one to seize Saidar instead of, succumbing to it, as so many have put it.
I'd believe that.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the problem wasn't with Nynaeve. Maybe it was with our interpretations. Maybe she could reach out to Saidar if they just let her.
So, of the two that I watched, I took both the Ogier's Longing, which was the final episode that they did, and The Greatest Warder. And I think I'll do The Greatest Warder first because I really liked that one because it is a callback to an actual scene in the book series. So this one is about the Greatest Warder, Jerome. And the story is that he was the greatest Gaidin that ever lived. With the origin story, we're at a Gaidin training ground. You see a lot of younglings kind of practicing, fighting each other, knocking each other out. One of them gets knocked out by one of his sparring partners, and the quartermaster basically is just like, here, get up, come over here. And he says the name, Jerome Gaidin. And the youngling is just like, oh yeah, the greatest warder that ever lived. And the story behind him was that he was basically an unbeatable Gaidin. Nobody could beat him. 10,000 victories, something like that, until one day he came across a farmer with a quarterstaff, and the farmer with the quarterstaff easily disarmed and defeated him. He had gone up against all of these unholy creatures, other soldiers, warriors, so on and so forth, always won. The lesson here being that never underestimate your enemy, because something as simple as a farmer with a quarterstaff could take you down. because you need to understand your enemy and not the weapon. And the callback here is this is basically the fight with Matt against Galad and Gawain in The Dragon Reborn. It happens in the early 20s for the chapters, if I remember right. But yeah, this is basically Gawain and Galad. I think they're bad talking Matt at this point, and he is just like, I'll take you both on at the same time with just my quarterstaff. And he goes on to take them both down without even trying. But they're both very taken aback by it. And this is where we learn the lesson of Jerome Gaidin in the books. There's really not much more to the origin story than that. I thought it was really cool that they basically took that section of the book that we may not see now because they put it into an origin episode happen. So
It's a simple scene, but it's
simple yet powerful.
powerful, yeah.
Because it was Hamar, like he knew what was going to happen when they both took him on. And once Matt started spinning his quarterstaff around and just kind of floors both of them, Hamar at the end of it basically said what we learn in this origin story, that during his lifetime, Jerome fought over 10,000 times in battle and single combat, and he was only defeated once by a farmer with a quarterstaff.
It's a good scene for Matt, too. I feel like that's when he starts to be more interesting and be more compelling.
Exactly. That's really when he starts coming into his own character, because during that entire fight too, he's just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, as he is just like just laying into these two.
In retrospect, you really enjoy seeing him beat those two up, or at least I did.
Was this before or after he went into the arches?
I don't remember.
He's at the tower now because they had just separated him from the dagger, so it is before him going into the arches. He hasn't gotten his memories back. This is all just his luck getting him through the battle. He doesn't have any battle, he doesn't have any past lives general kind of know-how on this. This is basically just a Ta'veren pull of his luck getting him through the battle.
His luck and skill, like he has fought with a quarterstaff before.
I feel like there's some element of skill in there.
This is another incident of Matt being an unreliable narrator, and he's saying he doesn't know what he's doing, but he does. It's just he lacks the confidence.
Well, at the beginning of the battle, he does go like, he does his very Matt thing of, it's time to toss the dice, and he, steps into the battle. But again, I thought it was a great little episode. I'm a little apprehensive now that we have this as an origin episode, we won't get to see this scene, and this is absolutely a scene that I did want to see.
I feel like we'll probably still get the scene, or I guess I should say, I hope that we still get the scene, even if we don't get the full explanation of, like, who Jerome Gaidin is. Because those are kind of two separate bits, right? Like, you can have the scene without the explanation of why Matt beating Galad and Gawain with the quarterstaff, like, resonates with the warders.
Yeah, you could walk away with it being a whole, it was a Ta'veren thing, and just be done with it there. You don't need the quartermaster to be like, oh, have you heard of Jerome Gaidin?
I don't even think it has to be a Ta'veren thing, because it is easy to underestimate a country boy with his bow staff, but that kid's been using that staff since he was a baby.
Yeah.
And he probably has more mastery of that weapon than those two have had best trainers, because he's been doing it for so long, and he's been doing it for not just a status symbol that these two rich boys are.
Yeah, just because, like, that's just the way of life.
He's just competent because he needs to be able to use the staff to defend himself, because he lives in an area where there are wolves and men that might attack. He's not herding sheep like with Rand. Matt's equally trained in all of that because they live in an area that's not as developed, and they don't have the protections that Galad and Gawain had in the palace, where they were surrounded by guards from the time they were born. Those two see Matt as a country bumpkin that has no skills, and they see themselves as being something special because they've had the best tutors their whole lives, when in reality, sometimes the best tutor is life. The life of somebody who has not had, everything handed to them.
The life of the farmer with the quarterstaff.
Exactly.
Also, I do kind of just want to see all of the Aes Sedai novices swarm around Galad. Oh, I do declare I have the vapors.
Yeah, I see it now. You just see the giggling novices and accepted sitting on the sides.
That's where we see the Grinwell girl get sent home.
Alright, so The other episode that I looked at was The Fall of Menetherin, or Manetherin, as they pronounce it. I don't know which one's correct.
They say in the show Manetherin.
I know, but we've always said Manetherin.
Yeah, you've got your own personal way to say it. Everybody does.
Well, we won't go into that too much, but
Well, I mean, hey, I won't date it, but soon we will have a book with an audiobook that tells us how to say all these things.
by the time this come out, we will have it already.
Yes.
Didn't the audiobooks for the actual books switch, not specifically with Manetherin, but like with other pronunciations? Like, didn't they switch pronunciations like in between?
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Sometimes Michael Kramer would say it one way and then Kate Reading would say it another, and then you go, I have no idea how to pronounce this correctly.
So I don't know if audiobook is the like arbiter of correctness.
Livingston did tell us that they spent a lot of time going back and forth with pronunciations for this one, so
And I think Kate Reading even sent out a tweet of, all right, finally, this is it. This is how to pronounce everything. Don't ever ask us again.
yes, the first couple books that came out, the budget wasn't there for them to go back and forth about pronunciation, and so it just got left to however they pronounced it when they read it. And the way audiobooks are, they're not sitting in the same room reading to each other, so if he said it one way and she said it another, that's just how it was. I wasn't going back because they didn't hear each other. Anyway, the fall of Menetherin, or whatever you want to call it. It was 1,000 years after the breaking. The war was still raging with the Dark One's forces, aka the Trolloc Wars, and King Aemon is fighting off the Trollocs and the Dreadlords, who have surrounded Menetherin under the banner of the Red Eagle. They are a very formidable army. They were known as the Sword That Could Not Be Broken, also called the Band of the Red Hand, which wasn't mentioned, but it should have been because it is going to be very important later in the series, and that's going to bug me. Of course, they succumb to the army, and when King Aemon dies, Queen Eldrine, who was a channeler and bonded to him, felt it. She committed suicide by drawing enough power to completely destroy the army of the Trollocs, and it completely destroyed the city, which is now the area we call the Two Rivers, where Matt, Perrin, Rand, and Egwene live. They also left out the significance of that. They didn't tell any of it, which it was told in the series, so I guess we do get that context in the main series itself. But it would have been more interesting to have more background on Eredol and why their betrayal was such a big thing.
They did kind of touch on it, right? You know, when they're riding the horses and Moraine is talking about it. She mentioned, she kind of gave a very Spark Notes version of it.
Did they mention it when they go into Shadow Logoth? That it was Eredol?
I feel like they mentioned that Hall was supposed to help Menetherin, and then they just kind of sealed themselves off. And then once they opened, you know, they broke open the walls, they were like, there's nobody here.
Yeah, they do go into that in the show.
But there was more to it, because it wasn't just that they refused to help. That Menetherin, Eredol, and 8 other countries, after the breaking, finally came together to settle the land. They signed the Compact of 10 Nations, and they all agreed to come to each other's aid. And when Menetherin put out the call for aid to Eredol, and Eredol refused to come, they broke that pact, which was at this point hundreds of years old. So that was a huge thing. But it wasn't just that. The Amyrlin at the time, Tetsuin, was jealous of Eldrine and her power, and she advised Eredol not to go because she was jealous. And her advisor, Mordeth, was also the advisor for the Eredol we might see later in the series. Spoilers. Because of this betrayal, Tetsuin was stripped of her titles and stilled, and then Eredol stilled itself up and was never seen again. So, like, we miss all of that, which is sad because I think there's so much more to the story that you don't even really get in the book series if you don't dig a little deeper.
I agree. It's a shame that we don't get that because that is really interesting context. But I think that just given what these little short stories are trying to do, which is like be this very brief, basic introduction, like that's the 200 level class.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they could have, like, there was no mention of Mordeth. There's no mention of the pack.
We might see it in the TV show. I mean, like the way that we get a little more information about Eredol in the show that then lends itself to knowing some background and context for this episode. Like we might get that later on.
Yeah, I would assume when we go back to Shadow Logoth, we're going to get some more information.
Yeah.
We better, considering.
And I'm sure that they also figure that no one is watching Origins who hasn't watched the TV show or isn't going to watch the TV show.
It's true.
Yeah, that is true. Maybe I'm just rushing it. I want that context now because you need that context later. It won't make sense.
I agree, because the whole story of the fall of Manetheren, I love it so much. It is such a sad and tragic story. And you know what? The animation for the fall of Manetheren does it justice. It really does.
It does. There's the one point when all you see is the close-up of Aemon's eyes, like those bright green eyes, and like a little bit of his crown, but like you can just see the anguish in his eyes because he's trying to save his.
He's also got some arrows in his back. He knows he's on death's door.
Yeah, and he knows it's pointless, but he's going to try to save his kingdom and his people and his loved ones, and it's not gonna help, but he's not gonna stop. Like there's nothing else to that shot. It doesn't even really move. I think you kind of see like some quiver in the eye, but it's very moving and it's really beautiful, which is why I was like, I want to do that one.
It's a good one. It's one of the better ones.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely one of the best Origins episodes.
I just wanted more of it. I wanted it to be an hour, okay? I know it's only 3 minutes or a minute and a half or whatever, but it really should have been 60. We just need a whole episode.
I would not complain if we had a whole episode dedicated to the fall of Manetheren.
All right, Amazon, I am proposing a new series. It's going to be set in Manetheren. It's going to be about the Trolloc Wars.
I mean, I'd watch it.
If you can spend $700 million on an episode of Ring of Powers, we can do the fall of Manetheren, the mini-series.
The Trolloc Wars. Just call it the Trolloc War. Or the 100 Years War, or whatever it was.
Oh, that would be awesome. War of the Shadow.
Yeah.
And HBO got House of Dragons. Why can't we get the War of Shadow?
Yeah. You got House of Dragons. You got Rings of Power. Why not the Trolloc Wars? Just saying, I'll be your showrunner.
There's a lot there, like a lot of material. Obviously, like you'd have to make up a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of just like bits where you can just fill in the blanks. That would be really good.
I mean, Rings of Power is already doing that, so
Yeah. We said we're not gonna talk about Rings of Power, so I'm trying not to.
But it keeps coming up. But there's more source material for this than there was for Rings of Power. Just saying.
At least more source material that they would presumably have access to anyway.
And a hard pivot. How about that White Tower, Fenya?
Yeah, so the White Tower. The White Tower is basically an overview of how the White Tower was created. It's the Amyrlin talking about the start of the tower and saying, like, you know, after the breaking, there were these surviving factions of female Aes Sedai who came together to protect the world, essentially, while the male channelers went mad. She talks a little bit about the process of going through the tower and being raised to the Shawl. Like, first you're a novice, then you're an accepted, and then you take the 3 oaths and you become an Aes Sedai. And then she gives an explanation of the different Ajah, and she doesn't actually, like, call them by their color, but when she describes each Ajah, you see an image, like a tapestry, essentially, of the group. So you know who she's talking about. I mean, presumably if you've read the books, you know who she's talking about anyway. But for viewers who haven't, or people who are a little more uncertain, you can place color with description. So she says, there are warriors standing ready, healers of all things living, keepers of the past, seekers of justice, law-focused diplomats, pursuers of truth and reason, and then those dedicated to preventing the wrong and dangerous use of the one power.
So the ideals of each Ajah.
Yeah, the ideals of each Ajah. And then she gives a short explanation of the hall, like it's the central council, and it's represented by 3 sitters from each Ajah. And that's essentially where the episode ends.
It's a great crash course on Aes Sedai, basically.
And if you aren't sure, that was green, yellow, brown, gray, white.
Yeah, so it's green, yellow, brown, blue, gray, white, and red, respectively, which I appreciated because I do always get gray and white confused. Probably because they don't show up in the books as much. But
We definitely see more of white than we do of gray in the books.
we don't see enough of either for me to remember their characteristics. I'm just going to say that.
That's totally fair. I mean, they have very similar ideals. the books definitely focus more on the more action-oriented Ajas than the more idealistic Ajas.
I personally don't see white and gray as so similar. Like, from my perspective, they have very different goals.
What a brown thing to say.
I think
But
no, I think you're right, Doll. I think they do have very different goals, but for someone who's like a first-time reader who's being bombarded with all of this information,
yeah, it's a lot.
it's very easy to make diplomacy and like reason kind of like mesh in your mind and not be able to figure out which one is which. And also gray and white as colors, they're kind of
They
similar.
are. I mean, gray is just dirty white. Neither are actually colors.
There is one thing they do bring up at the end, and it's basically this is why we chose where the White Tower is going to be,
Oh,
Yes.
in the shadow of Dragon Mount,
yes.
because the Dragon Reborn is coming, and this is our reminder.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was actually in the breaking one.
That's also in the White Tower episode.
It was in the White Tower one as well.
You
Yeah.
get a really cool shot of Tarvalon as they like draw out, and you can see Dragon Mountain in the distance.
Or aka Kinslayer's Dagger. So I guess if you don't have anything more to add on to the White Tower one, we'll move on, I guess, to the final short, which is An Ogier's Longing. This one was my favorite one of all of them, and this was the last one that they released. So basically, the crux of this one was just, it's all about Loyal. First and foremost, while it doesn't mention Loyal in any fashion, it's all about Loyal. So we have an unnamed Ogier, and he is talking about that it is very rare and unusual that an Ogier decides to leave a steading. Because in the years of the breaking during the exile, Ogier wandered, lost in search of their steadings. That's like a big thing about the Ogier. That's why they kind of stick to where they're at, and they don't come out and they don't help anyone anymore, is because during the breaking of the world, they got separated from their steadings because the steadings got shuffled around in the breaking, as we discussed with the first episode of the Origins, and they could not find their steading anymore. So they wandered, kind of like the Tinkers, they just kind of wandered the world looking for their homes. And in doing so, they developed basically a deadly homesickness that if they don't get back to these spaces in a certain amount of time, they will die. So they go on to talk about how there's no better place to be than an Ogier Grove with its big, tall, great trees. That's one of the defining features that we have of an Ogier Grove, is they've got these, if you want a real world comparison, think of a California redwood, how big and huge they are. That would be kind of the signaling factor that you are near a steading. And these trees have been around since the Age of Legends. So they harbor a special property as well that no shadow spawn can enter them, and you are unable to channel any of the one power while you are within the special zone. The narrator goes on to talk about how people of the world came to desire Ogier masonry and stuff like that. And in the short itself, we get to see a group of Ogier do some tree singing, which was really nice. So they do some tree singing at one of the great trees, and we see like they make a little boat for a little child Ogier. But the whole thing of it is, the steading is great, the steading is lovely, there's no better place to be. But in the heart of some Ogier, they want to see the world and see everything outside, which, kind of leads into the journey that Loyal is having following Rand around at this point, is he wants to see where this goes, right? But this was a beautiful short. This is my favorite one. Like, I won't lie, it brings a tear to my eye. It's just such a good one. Like, because I feel like I have that wanderlust, or that wanderlust sometimes, and just describing how an Ogier is about it. Like, I love my home. I love to be here. When I'm here, I feel recharged. My social battery goes from 0 to 100 no time's flat. But if I'm out too long away from home, I start feeling like I need to get back home again.
It's very relatable.
You're saying the Ogier are neurodivergent.
Or what?
Neurodivergent.
Or just introverts.
Or introvert.
I wouldn't say neurodivergent maybe, but they just really like their homes. It raises a good point though, that they do say in the short that the Ogier, because of the longing, they're tied to their homes, which I have a question I could raise about that. I don't know how spoilerific this is, because we know that the Ogier aren't technically from this world. thanks to the portal stones. They came from another dimension. So if they decided to use their book of transformation and leave, does the longing go with them or is it left behind?
I don't know, but I'm going to say that I completely missed the fact they're from another dimension on my first read through.
You did? Oh.
Yeah, they are not from Randland.
Yeah, I don't think that I got that when I read the books. I don't know if I was reading too fast or if I would just completely missed something, but
It's entirely possible that we just had so many years of speculating, like how portal stones work, because they only work because they're not an Aes Sedai creation. The gateways were created in conjunction with the Aes Sedai because they were a gift.
Are you talking about the ways?
Oh, that's the ways. That's correct. I'm mixing up the ways and the portal stones.
The ways were a gift to the Ogier from the male channelers who had basically taken kind of sanctuary inside Ogier groves because they couldn't channel while in there. But, because of the nature of how the ways were created, things happen.
Yeah, the taint. I was mixing up the portal stones and the ways, but the portal stones were 100% the Ogier, and they work by moving through dimensions.
okay, that I did know, or that they work through moving through dimensions. I just don't remember that they were Ogier related at all.
My theory that the reason that they get the longing is because they are not supposed to be in this dimension. The longer they're away from the steadings, which are a part of their dimension that is within ours, that's why the steading are outside of the power and everything, is because it is a slice of their dimension that has been transported into ours, and they're longing to go back there because they're drawn back to their own dimension.
So to poke a hole in that, why didn't that happen to the Shanshan Ogier?
We don't know. There's something different about them. But they also, if you think about how aggressive the Shanshan Ogier are,
Way more aggressive.
is it because they're channeling that longing into aggression and putting a long handle on their axes?
Yeah, that's one thing that's never really expanded upon.
We haven't expanded on it. We don't know why. I think that might have been something that would have been explored in the Outwigger novels.
But yeah, because it's one of those things of they found their static because they had a smaller landmass to search on. So during the breaking, they found their steadings way easier than the Ogier on, this side of the pond did. So, I mean, that's a very viable theory that it kind of, if we're going to go with the multiple reality, I mean, we know there's multiple realities. We've seen it happen in the books. But if they kind of, because of the breaking, kind of went and just kind of shifted out of place, then yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so our channeling doesn't work in their steadings because they're not in this plane.
Well, you can't access the one power while in it, but we have seen people specifically, I won't name characters, but we have seen people take wells of power into and still use it. So it's usable in there, just not accessible.
Yeah, because you can't access it because you're no longer in that plane of existence. But if you bring it in with you, you can use it. And we know that they know about the Ilverin and Ilverin way more than, we know the elders know what they are, who they are, because they don't seem to like or trust them.
Didn't they tell them at one point, stay away from the tower, don't go near it?
Yeah, Loyal told them never to go anywhere near the Tower of Genji. The only bad things come from that.
And nobody listened.
Nope. Well, Moraine didn't really have a choice.
So yeah, Moraine really didn't have a choice with it, but everybody else did, and they decided to go into it. So.
Fair, I don't know that Matt really had a choice either.
No, he was kind of fated into doing it,
Yeah.
more or less. But no, it wasn't the Book of Transformation. It was the Book of Translation, which is, I guess, easy enough to mess up because they're both big words that start with T.
Yeah. And if you think of translation rather than, most people think of it as you're translating one word from one language into another, but it doesn't have to specifically be languages. So what this book is doing is you're translating your reality from one to the other. We don't know if they would be using that. We just know it will move them between worlds, and we don't know what world they would go to, if it's another planet or if it's just another reality.
Right.
But they appeared sometime either before or during Age of Legends, and they chose not to do it in the War of the Shadow, and they lost touch with their steadings. So that's why they were considering doing it when the Tarvalon was happening, because they didn't want that to happen again.
Oh yeah, I mean, wouldn't you? It would be kind of a situation of, I don't know if we're going to survive this, so we might need to just hightail it to the next dimension.
Get the heck out of Dodge right now.
Yeah.
Let the humans deal with their own mess.
But they didn't use it during the breaking of the world, so why use it at Tarmangaiden?
Because they knew they were better.
Anyways, this was a great episode. Again, 3 minutes, but it gets so much out of it for me because I really love the Ogier as a concept and a race.
I think it's sad that we don't get more of the Ogier in any of the.
Yeah, at this point in the series, it's kind of they've retreated into their sanctuaries. You'll see some come out sometimes to do some masonry work, but we're past the heyday of the Ogier, basically. In some of the earlier books, we get to go and visit them inside of their steadings, specifically. Like when the first time they are like, we're going to take the ways. So they go to a steading and they're like, hey, show us one of the way gates.
I still find it interesting that for a race that deals so heavily with trees, they're most known for like buildings. That, I mean, not that there's anything inherently like contradictory about that, but it just I find interesting.
Well, I mean, they are because the buildings are still standing.
I know, but in real life, I wouldn't necessarily correlate being a good gardener with being a good architect.
Well, they weren't the same Ogier. They all have different trades. And, like, they aren't really carpenters because they're singing the wood, much like we saw in this video. They aren't carving it, they're singing to the trees.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't associate them with carpentry either. But just like, given that the race as a whole feels so strongly about trees, I just find it interesting that the race as a whole is also known for building these stone buildings that last thousands and thousands of years.
Doesn't that make a great analog for how slow, thoughtful, and everything that the Ogier stands for? That they would have masonry that is standing from the Age of Legends to this day?
I guess it just, I mean, I don't know. There's a disconnect in my head. That's probably just a me problem.
I also suspect that it's not that they're taking bricks and laying them because they're in almost impossible shapes that are impossible to do. I think they're singing the stone as well. So they're manipulating nature through their magic. So it's basically, nature magic or a green witch or whatever.
Yeah, we also learn a little bit too that during the breaking of the world that they used their tree singing to help grow crops too. So you could say that they're great agriculturalists as well.
Well, that makes
more sense, huh?
That makes more sense to me, yeah. But I like your idea that they're using their like nature singing, not specifically tree singing, but like nature singing abilities. Whenever someone has said like Ogier build great buildings in the books, I think of like masonry, like more I don't want to say craft work because that implies that their singing skills is not craft work, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but like more physical hands-on work than something like tree singing. But I like your interpretation.
Because they don't do it anymore, so we don't really get to see. But isn't there a scene where we see them? I guess it was the tree singing.
It's mentioned several times throughout the series. Are you talking about masonry work or tree singing?
I was trying to think if there was like we saw it, but we see one tree singing in the book.
We do, and that's when Rand and Loyal have accidentally used the portal stone to switch over to another dimension, and Loyal tree sings a staff out of a tree, and he uses it there before kind of discarding it, and he's very sad about having to discard it, but they're running from the Grolm. And that's also where they come across Celine for the first time. So that is one front-facing instance of seeing actual tree singing happen in the series.
So he's attached to it. He's basically coaxed that tree into growing a staff for him.
Yeah, because he's very politely asking with song, hey tree, will you please give me something? And the tree gives him the staff. And he's very sad that he has to discard it to escape from the Grolm.
I mean, if I could do that to a tree, I'd be sad too.
I would be too.
And that was a gift. Like, that tree gave that to me, and I'm just going to throw it away. That's rude.
Ogier are great. I wish we had got a lot more of them than we did, but like I said earlier, we're kind of in a post-heyday. We're in the wind down. The only time you ever see Ogier outside of the steading at this point is if you've got a rogue like Loyal who has just left the steading, or if a city has paid some Ogier masons to come out and fix a building or something like that. But they're not building anymore. They've retreated and they're packed away in their steadings, away from humans. They're done with them after the breaking.
It sort of reminds me of the Ents in Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, it's true.
I can see the relation, yeah.
except they haven't lost their wives. They have women. Royal might be running away from his, but
I mean, he gets to get married.
he eventually agrees.
Well, okay, he agrees to get married. That's more than the Ents ever get.
Yeah, I think that about covers it for all of the Origins episodes. Do we have any kind of final thoughts on it?
No, I think we've gone everywhere.
It's kind of a great crash course at the, the world building lore of the series as a whole. Like if you really want to know more, this is great to kind of whet your appetite on what's coming because we're going to get a lot more of this. I don't know if we're getting more Origins episodes. I assume so.
I think I saw something on Twitter that implied that we were, but it was not an official tweet from the show account. It was someone talking about it, which makes it all speculation. So
I would assume with how much that they have been putting into this, because on top of what we have talked about tonight, you can also look at like the different organizations in the world. You can look at a full kind of world map of the places we've been with a little bit of backstory on all of it, which is great because some of that stuff is like mentioned once in the actual book series. So it's nice to get a little bit more on some of that stuff. We get different organizations, we get some myths on stuff. You can see kind of production photos from all of the episodes. So you can see things that were originally filmed into the episode but initially cut. So the two that come to the top of my head, a shot with Moraine and Lan and Loyal with a big map while they're still in Tarvalon because they're going to go take the ways. And then another one which I know this one kind of chafed a lot of people's thighs about, but it was that using the way gates, you didn't use the leaf. We just saw Moraine kind of open it, but we get some production shots showing Fane with the little leaf to open it. That we didn't get that in the show. So stuff like that. It's great. There's so much behind the scenes stuff, and this what we talked about tonight is just kind of a drop in the bucket.
I mean, we do see a leaf in the show. Like when we get a glimpse of Fane coming out, don't we see a leaf there in that shot?
There's production pictures of him like that, but I don't think any of those made it into the episode.
I don't think we see him actually holding something, but
It may be on the gate itself.
yeah, I have a vague recollection of seeing something somewhere in the show, which is so nebulous that it's not useful at all. But
Somewhere. We've only got 8 hours to scrounge for that leaf.
yeah, but I thought that if you looked really, really hard, you could find it. Which I mean, maybe you shouldn't have to look really, really hard, but
They're just getting the book fans something to look for,
yeah.
But yeah, I think that about covers it, unless we have anything else that we want to.
We did say, or you did say, we would put a pin in the discussion of trusting the showrunner.
Yes. Okay. So, one thing I had been thinking about with the show in particular, and a specific character, namely Perrin, is a lot of the time in the book, Perrin is our exposition guy, right? So, we get a scene, Perrin's already developed his wolf powers at this point. Well, not in the show. I'm just saying, in general, Perrin has developed his wolf powers. So, we're in any scene that he is a part of, right? Rand is talking to an Aes Sedai. Egwene is talking to somebody else. It doesn't matter who's talking to who, but Perrin is there. And he is generally always our exposition guy of the conversations going on between these two characters. And you always get that kind of inner monologue of Perrin going, oh, Rand has the smell of apprehension about him while he's talking to the Aes Sedai. So we get the conversation, and then we get that kind of exposition of, oh, Rand is actually really kind of uptight about what's going on in the situation right now. And then as he's talking to the Aes Sedai has this very haughty nature, and she is putting on a farce, but she's actually very afraid. He can smell the fear on her, kind of thing. So I've been really trying to think how this is going to translate as well into the TV show, because it's hard to adapt an exposition character like this. I mean, I have faith that they can do it. I just don't personally have the know-how to see on how to get around doing that.
Well, I don't think that Perrin's going to be an exposition character like that. Perrin specifically, who in the books we get so much of his inner monologue, you can't necessarily translate that to TV show unless you get unless you decide to do like voiceovers, and I don't think that's the direction they're gonna go for.
That will not work in this setting.
I think we're just not gonna get that kind of like internal view of the character because we can't. In a TV show, you really can't get much of that. But that's not to say that I don't think, like, I think they will express those things through other methods. It's just not gonna be we see Perrin's, internal thoughts giving us that exposition.
Right. Do you think this will change his character at all, though?
I think it will. I mean, I think it's going to change his character a little bit just because so much of his character is bound up in this inner monologue. And I think it's going to be for the better because honestly, Perrin's one of the least interesting. Like, he gets so tied up in his own head that it doesn't make for interesting reading a lot of the time.
In the early to middle books, absolutely. I personally feel like later in the series, he gets so much better.
I mean, I agree that he gets a little bit better.
And this is coming from someone who hates early series Perrin. Like, I cannot stand him because his character is, I don't know what to do. What do I do? Rand would know what to do.
See, I'm a little bit the opposite. I really liked early Perrin, and as the series went on, I liked him less. And we talked about the slog in the previous episode. And for me, the slog was very bound up with Perrin and Perrin's viewpoint. So if we get less of that, I'll be happy. But I mean, this is just one one opinion of what might happen, not what will happen. So
Right. Yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about a lot of how are they going to handle kind of just this because his character arc with how it's handled in the books is very different from everybody else. And it purely exists to help the reader.
yeah, and I think that's going to change, and I don't think that's going to translate, and I don't think they're going to try to translate it.
I wouldn't say purely. Like, I identify so hard with Perrin the first time I read it because there's that point where your inner dialogue is so overwhelming and so much more than what you can get out to the world that it's really hard because you just need a little more time to take it and make it make sense and give it to the world that people often look at you and think you're just slow or dumb. I've never personally had that problem, but I understand the getting so caught up with what's going on here that you can't get it out here. And it often, for me, it translates into just not talking.
I think that's one of the compelling things about Perrin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't think they should change that because I think the fact that he gets caught up in his head is really relatable. I mean, that's something that I struggle with too. Not struggle with because it's not a struggle. Like, I think more than I say. That's fine. I think the two issues are separate. And I think they can keep that aspect of Perrin while changing the exposition aspect of Perrin.
Yeah, like the exposition's not needed because the difference between written word and acting is the acting.
You bring my whole argument down with like 4 words.
Yeah. Sorry. But like show don't tell.
That's fair. I just was coming from a place of like how his character was framed in the books and how it's going to translate to different medium entirely. Like I have faith that Rafe and his team are going to like do a pretty good job at doing this. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, they're going to screw it up. It's going to be terrible." It's like I'm confident they'll do a good job with it. I'm just curious at where they're going to go with it.
I also think that Marcus he does a really good job of showing that internal turmoil going on in Perrin's head. I just wish they hadn't fridged his wife. That just feels a little icky. I think they could have done something there.
I still think that was a bad decision.
I think that I understand where they were coming from with that.
I get it, yeah.
I get it.
I agree that it was a bad, I mean, it's shorthand, but it's bad shorthand.
It's a great way to just kind of like give a good push to his character instead of having to spend half the season developing that. We've got that immediate push off.
Absolutely. Like, I get why they did it. It's just a bad look.
I think it's unfortunate that the thing that drives him is also so tropey, And like I get why they chose his wife and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
What if it had been Master Luhan instead?
I think that would have been very impactful for everyone who had read the books. I don't think it would have been impactful for people who were just watching the show without context.
And that's probably why they went with a wife instead.
That's probably why they went with the wife instead, but that doesn't mean I like that they fringed his wife.
Oh, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think it would have worked though, even if you didn't know who Master Luhan was. You could have portrayed that.
But you don't have the same, when you're watching something without context, like you don't have the same visceral reaction to a teacher. I mean, you have a reaction, but it's not as deep as seeing like someone's wife or someone's child or someone's like sibling die.
Right, but that's what makes it so icky, because you're not only are you relying on a trope, you're using a human as a plot device solely because of their sex.
Got a reaction out of me because it was that kind of thing of turn.
I mean, got a reaction out of everybody, because fridging the wife is a trope for a reason. It's a very visceral shorthand, but it relies on those stereotypes that are troubling.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think it was awful, but I think they were going for something specific with it. And I think that if you ignore the trope implications, which is obviously we're all in agreement that those are bad, but if you just ignore that, I think that killing the wife or killing a partner, killing a loved one, killing a romantic relationship has more of an impact than killing a teacher.
Well, we know it couldn't have been a family member because
We could have just explored the death of his family.
I mean, they could have just killed a parent
Yeah.
and changed something. But
well,
they changed other things. Why not this?
Well,
But
yeah.
But the only reason it's a trope is because we put so much emphasis on this romantic relationship over other relationships. And exploring the loss of a mentor that acts as a father figure could have been just as impactful as a wife that we'd never met.
I think it could have been, but they would have had to give the time to explore it.
Time they definitely did not have.
Yeah.
I mean, you would not have had that visceral gut reaction, but that's cheap. You could have developed a richer story over the 8 episodes about the relationship with the Master Luhan if he had been the one killed, and what that means and why it impacts a parent. It would have been more meaningful.
I agree. Like I absolutely agree with you. That's not the way that they went, which I think is unfortunate, but
All right. Well, that went off the rails.
a little bit.
That's why I said it was kind of a tangent, but hey, it makes for good conversation.
It does.
It really does.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tarvalon Talks. If you have any comments or thoughts or want to yell at us for giving spoilers when we said we would try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, you can send us an email at producertvt@gmail.com. There's also a Tarvalon Talks thread in general on the tarvalon.net forums, or if you have joined the tarvalon.net Discord, we also have a channel to talk about the podcast. So come join us and talk about the podcast with us.